Welcome back, you guys. My name is Sarah. I'm known as Carnivore Yogi, and today's podcast episode is with a registered nurse and a food addiction expert. Her name is Bitten Jonsson. She was absolutely probably my favorite podcast interview that I've done so far. She was so much fun to talk to. This is a short little snippet of a longer conversation. If you want to catch the full conversation, go ahead and click the link below this video in the information section and in the comments for the full podcast episode. And I will probably post this full episode in a couple weeks. I'm just still brand new at the podcast thing, so I'm trying to get these episodes out. But I think that she has so much wisdom to share. And we really talk about how carnivore diet and a keto diet and these higher fat diets that limit sugar, all processed foods and grains can really help with food addiction. What is food addiction? Is this a real thing? I know a lot of the intuitive eating people and these nutritionists are out there saying there's no such thing as food addiction. I beg to differ, to be honest with you, and we really do dive into that in this podcast episode. So I really do hope that you guys enjoy it. I did allow Thrive to sponsor this video. I owe you guys a video on my update with Thrive on healing my gut. I did have an improvement between my first Thrive test and my second Thrive test following a carnivore diet, and I will be making a full video on that very soon for you guys, hopefully in the next few days here, so you can get the update. But it is really good news that I was able to stay carnivore and improve my gut microbiome in that 90-day period. So if that's something that you're interested in checking out for yourself, you want to check out Thrive, which is also linked below this video, and you can get a 50% off discount by following my link. Again, it's just a test that I have been running on myself, and the foods that I have been reintroducing back in the last couple weeks have all come from the recommendations that Thrive gave me. So again, video sponsored by Thrive. Hope you guys enjoy this little snippet of this conversation, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching. All right, you guys, thank you so much for coming back. I am very excited about today's guest. She is a registered nurse, she is an author, and she has quite a bit of experience with addiction. Someone who we're going to talk today about a lot of things, I'm sure, but one thing that I really love that she talks and advocates about is just that addiction is this one thing that, it could be alcohol, it could be food or shopping. It's so many things. And so I wanted to bring her here to really discuss these things with you. So if you wouldn't mind just introducing my audience to yourself a little bit more in depth.
Well, my name is Bitten Jonsson, and I live in the middle of Sweden by the Baltic in a small village out in the boonies, and I love that. I'm a nature lover, always been, and I'm 68. So, I have had many years behind me, of course, and done a lot. I'm a recovering alcoholic. Well, first I became a nurse, and I was one of those functioning alcoholic, hiding it like crazy. And then I ended up in treatment in California, and I'm forever grateful to my ex-husband that forced me in there. I hated him at the moment. I wanted to hit him, but I didn't understand. I was terrified. I was in shame. I was in pain. And the strange thing in my treatment, was that in the same building, there was like different, wards type thing. And I was in one with the alcohol and cocaine addicts and drug addicts and all that. I was in that. But there was one right beside us where there were really, really obese people, very sick, extremely obese, and anorexics. And normal weights. And I could not for my life. This is 1985,
Yeah.
How come they are in the same ward? And, they said, well, they have a common problem with food. So, that's the first time I sort of connected anything with food in that way. But I forgot about that after going into recovery and leaving until I had been sober for 7 years. And I was listening to Terry Gorski. I love his book, Staying Sober, because it taught me so much about relapse prevention, which is a favorite topic for me to teach. So anyway, I read the book. I listened to Terry. He came to Sweden. And he said that alcoholics and drug addicts that keep drinking a lot of coffee, eating junk food, and smoking, they're going to relapse.
Mm.
And as a nurse, I thought, well, wait a minute, what's the connection? I started to be very interested in biochemistry and, the brain and all that. So what's the connection with that? And, he said, well, of course, it stresses the brain, and junk food is not the proper nutrition for building a brain.
Mm.
But I kept forgetting that too. I kept going working and so, but I went home and quit smoking.
Yeah.
And then I used to tell people that I have chocolate sauce up to my ears. So that's how this all started, with me working with sugar and food.
And it's funny you mentioned that. And a lot of people know I am in recovery, and I have been for 11 years, not sober the whole time. But if you go to a recovery meeting, what do they have there? They have a smoking
Oh,
section
yes,
outdoors now. Thank goodness it's outdoors, but they have a
yes.
smoking section, but then they have the coffee
The
and the
donut.
donuts. Yeah, coffee and
Yeah.
donuts.
Yes.
Everyone
Yes.
smokes outside, and it's part of
Yes.
the whole social thing
Yes.
of a
Yeah.
recovery meeting. And it's like, no one really questions it. People getting up to get 4 cups of coffee during a meeting. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, okay, we're just not drinking and we're not doing the drugs and everything. But
Right.
what?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel very sad seeing that,
Yeah.
because I also see that they become obese. They get
Yes.
diabetes type 2. They get all kinds of inflammatory illnesses, chronic pain illnesses, and
Yeah.
arthritis, and all kinds of illnesses, which is of course due to them keep eating
Mhm.
processed food, sugar, flour, and processed food. And at one meeting I go to, sometimes some of the old timers, I'm an
Mhm.
old timer there, and they're old timers, they said, oh, thank God you're here, now we can talk about food. Or sugar, they say, use the word sugar. And we joke because but I'll always, when I go to meetings, I share my journey. I am a sugar addict that became an alcoholic and a nicotine
Mm.
addict, because I think we should talk about that and not
Mhm.
say alcoholism, drug addiction,
Yes.
pill addiction, nicotine addiction. That's very dangerous,
Yep.
because there is nobody that has one outlet today. We have
No.
addiction interaction disorder. And one
Yep.
thing you have to know, and I wrote that in my first book, 2004, that I see that alcoholics have sugar addiction
Mhm.
before alcohol, from childhood.
Yes. I lost 100 pounds 3 times.
Oh God. Yeah.
3.
So
The last time was 11 years ago. And I think
you look gorgeous.
well, thank you. One of the reasons I think that I got into the alcohol so badly is I had a
Yeah.
traumatic event, and I was very hell bent on not going back to food.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I found that alcohol could do the same thing for
Oh,
me
of
that the
course.
food could do. So I've never
Yeah.
regained that 100 pounds
Yeah.
again for the
Yeah.
4th time. Thank God. Thank God I've been able to keep the weight off for this
Yeah.
last, 11 years or so. But
Congratulations.
that,
Woohoo.
well, thank
That's
you.
big. That's big. I
you
know.
know,
I know that journey. Yes.
it's hard, but the thing is that it was so insidious how that addiction just snapped right over,
Over. It took over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
know so many
Yeah.
people working with, this addiction interaction disorder. And of course, the most common is sugar, flour, processed food, and alcohol, mind you.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and so when we do the sugar evaluation instrument, we see, I've just coached one of my students in the class right now. Both her clients had food and alcohol.
Hmm.
And what I see, what shocks me, is that you talk about the 12-step groups, support groups, that they have a lot of junk food like AA,
Yes.
well, alcoholics, drug addicts, blah blah blah. But one thing I see that scares me even more is that keto people, low carb keto people,
Oh
are
yeah.
so in love with alcohol and
Yeah.
get so much consequences.
Yeah.
To
Oh
me,
yes.
if I were to talk about low carb keto, I would say alcohol is not part of the food plan. How would you ever think that?
Right. Yeah.
If you want to have health, because it's brain, it's a nerve toxin, and it
Yes.
stops the fat metabolism in your liver, even in small amounts. So I mean, you eat low carb keto and then you drink. I mean,
Yeah.
hello. It's
Yeah.
like putting the fire down here and burning it down here. But
Exactly.
did you ever read the book The Hidden Addiction by Janice Keller Phelps?
Hmm.
I
I
would
haven't read
I
that.
would
No.
like no, I dedicated my last book to her. She was an
Oh,
American
okay.
doctor, And she wrote this book, I think 86, 87, 89, maybe. I read it in the beginning of the 90s, and I'm shocked. She worked with alcoholics, and she saw this
Mm.
thing with sugar, the hidden addiction is sugar that were before alcoholism. But, she was really put down and not taken serious.
Mm.
So whenever I get a
Yeah.
chance, I try to really raise her. So I dedicated my last book, The Sugar Bomb 3.0, to her and to John
Yeah.
Jadkin. Yeah.
So, that's just huge that you say that, sugar addiction comes before the
Absolutely.
alcohol addiction for most people. And I feel like if you say that in a recovery meeting, people actually get very defensive, and they'll say stuff like, oh, well, you can't get pulled over for overeating. It's not, they just kind of downplay it and talk about it as though it's not a deadly thing, and as though it doesn't really,
What?
yeah, it doesn't take over your
That
life. I've
that
been,
is so rude and ignorant and arrogant.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you can be pulled over because you have a diabetes attack caused by sugar addiction, and you pass out and you kill somebody. Hey, come on. I could
Exactly.
I could I could tell about 20 such incidents, where sugar addiction causes the most crazy consequences. And the interesting thing, I used to, when I was doing clients for many, many years, running groups, I had alcohol and drug counselors come to do a study visit. Like they were thinking, oh, this is a milder addiction. This is not so bad.
Yeah.
And they heard the clients tell about their consequences. It blew their mind.
Mm,
So if you say like that, you never ever read about or heard about the consequences you get. And I think that sugar addiction is the worst addiction.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
alcoholics and drug addicts just want to hit me, but hear me out. They didn't start drinking and doing drugs when they were 1, 2, 3, 4 years old.
Mm,
And the reason they are alcohol and drug addicts is because they were having such foggy brain from the sugar and flour, so they didn't know what they did when they started doing alcohol and drugs.
mm,
I mean, that's more the truth. See?
yeah.
So when they quit alcohol and drugs, they defend sugar
Oh,
with
yeah.
tooth and nail. Don't take that baby from me, because they're
Yeah.
not ready to go really drug free. And
Yeah.
that's going to cause a lot of problems. But if you look at sugar addiction, it's the earliest exposure of any addiction, and it's continuous exposure. We
Yeah.
constantly have to battle craving.
Yes.
And if you
Yeah.
know addiction memory circuit and euphoric recall, if you understand those mechanisms, we are bombarded with smells, with sight, with the drug. And people say, oh, you can have a little bit, right?
Yeah. Have it in
Oh, I
moderation.
get
That's
I get almost hot when I think about it. When they the resistance we're meeting. Oh, I know. I know.
Yeah, and one thing I heard you on an interview earlier today I listened to, and this is how it always was with me and alcohol, that, when I pick up the drink, I'm strapping myself onto the back of a runaway train, and I have no idea when that thing is going to stop.
Right.
And food, I've realized after, finding the carnivore diet and getting off the sugar and really looking at food addiction and alcohol addiction as the same thing for me.
Yep.
That I know if I go and have a little bit of something, it's the same. I'm going to be on that runaway train again, and I have no idea how and when it's going to stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because willpower cannot rule your reward center. So
No.
once you get it in, it's like, if you're highly, highly allergic, I mean, if people that die from one peanut, it's sort
Yeah.
of that, but it is what we do with ourselves
Yeah.
from that one drink, one pill, one bite. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah. And,
That's
I
it.
tell
Loss of
people
control. Yep.
zero. And
Yep.
there's no bottom line. You don't care who you hurt.
No, of course not.
I'm still with my husband. He's been with me for 15 years through all of this. And
Wow.
the thing that was very scary for him was that when I was drinking, I would hide it. I would lie about it. And he said I would get this glazed over look that he could tell when I was lying. He could tell if I had been drinking or taken something. And the thing that was really difficult for him when I actually quit drinking and got sober was that I was doing the same thing with food. And I would lie to him about going in the kitchen and
Exactly.
sneaking a little bite of food and going in the
Yeah.
bedroom and eating this. And he said I had the same look in my eyes, the same glazed over look
Yeah.
with the food as I did with
Yeah.
the alcohol. So it was like post-traumatic stress disorder for him to have to
Yeah.
watch me
Yeah.
go through the same thing with food. And I just don't think people really understand how serious and how deep that food addiction goes, you know?
You're not there. Your kids see
Yeah.
it. I've
Oh,
had,
yes.
I've talked to kids seeing that mommy is in another world, or daddy, or, I can't connect with them. They are not with you. They're not here
Yeah.
and now. So
Yeah.
it's exactly the same. And people that don't want to understand that, they either are addicts, sugar addicts themselves. So they're trying
Yeah.
to defend the drug. And I
Yeah.
tell you, if there's anything in this world, people will defend that particular drug, because it's more
Yes.
obvious that you smell from alcohol, but you
Yeah.
can hide sugar and flour more. So they can defend it to death.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. So
Yeah.
it's a very, very, very powerful addiction
Yeah.
that has all the consequences like the others.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
lying, the hurting your family,
Oh,
the
yeah.
stealing,
Yes.
the losing money, and
Yeah.
it's sad.
You have a very deep love relationship with food, so
Yes.
you exclude others. There is no
Yes.
intimacy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
have
I
that
don't
with the drug.
yeah, I would
Drug.
do anything I could to try to leave somewhere early so I could go home and actually eat what I wanted to eat, you know.
Yeah,
It's like you
yeah,
never want to, and I did the same thing with alcohol. It's like you
yeah,
don't really want other people to see you doing that, but when
yeah,
you're home all by yourself, alone, isolated, you know, because it's a
yeah.
very isolating disease.
Yes.
You have whatever you want, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You can start a fight, or pretend you're sick
Yes.
so you can go home and hide alone to eat. And I remember one evening when I was, have made my favorite big plate of the ice cream with all
Yes.
kinds of junk on. I used to call that my fat pill. It was huge. I mean, huge. Would have been for 5 people or something. So I make that, and I'm, almost, so excited to get to be alone and sit and eat that, and somebody comes ringing on the door.
Oh no.
I mean, you wanna just scream and, throw them out and say, "Who's coming?" And you have to hide it in the cupboard. You don't know how fast you're gonna get rid of them.
Oh yeah.
Horrible. I mean, there's so many sick situations like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's sad, you know,
Yes, yes,
it's just a sad and depressing place to be. And I see
absolutely. Yeah.
so many people just really suffering. Well, I
And
wanted to,
families.
hmm?
And families.
And
Yeah.
families. Yeah, it
Spouse,
affects addiction
partner.
as a family disease. You know, it
Oh,
started
always,
my
always.
family, you know, my dad was an alcoholic and then my mother was obese
Yeah,
and just a major food addict. So we had it on both. And so it's like, yeah, he's the bad one because he's doing all the alcoholic stuff. But, you know,
yeah.
we're being picked up from school and sorry, dad's, you know, not here, but here's moon pie and RC cola, you know, and it's
Oh,
like
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
medicated with food
yeah,
constantly and
yeah,
comforted by it. And
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. My
Well,
mom was a smoker, but I don't. Other than that, my parents was not into, alcohol or food.
yeah,
Uh, but I had it all around in others.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.